The snow had a way of making the city quieter. It softened the roar of traffic, muted the distant sirens, and turned even the hardest streets into something gentler, almost forgiving. On Maplewood Avenue, the old street lamps cast warm golden halos onto the fresh snow, creating pools of light that looked like safe places in a world that was anything but. That was where the children Saturday on a frozen wooden bench near the park entrance. A boy no older than 6 clutched a crying infant to his chest. His thin jacket was zipped all the way up, but it wasn't enough. His small hands were red and trembling, wrapped tightly around the baby as snowflakes collected in his hair and melted against his flushed skin. The baby screamed, sharp, desperate cries that cut through the peaceful winter scene like broken glass. Most people walked past, some glanced, then looked away. Others pulled their coats tighter and pretended not to hear. In a city that prided itself on ambition and speed, stopping was considered a luxury few believed they could afford. Except one man, Ethan Cole had just left the office. His black wool coat was tailored, expensive. The kind of coat that told the world he belonged in boardrooms, not on park benches. His shoes were polished, his watch understated but unmistakably valuable. The yellow glow of Christmas lights reflected off the sharp angles of his jaw as he walked, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes. Tell them we'll finalize after the holiday," he said calmly. "No delays." He stopped mid-sentence, the crying. Ethan turned his head slowly, eyes scanning the park. That was when he saw them, the boy and the baby, small shapes against the vast white snow. He ended the call without another word. For a moment, he simply stood there, his breath visible in the cold air. His first instinct was practical, automatic. Someone else will handle it. There are shelters. There are systems. But his feet moved anyway. He crossed the snow-covered sidewalk and approached the bench, kneeling so he was eye level with the child. "Hey there," Ethan said softly. The boy's eyes snapped up, wide and fearful. He shifted his body protectively, angling himself between the man and the baby. "Don't take her," the boy said quickly, voice cracking. Ethan froze. "I'm not here to take anyone," he replied, raising his hand slightly. I heard the baby crying." The infant wailed louder, her tiny face red with cold and hunger. "What's your name?" Ethan asked gently. The boy hesitated. "Lucas." Ethan nodded. "I'm Ethan." Lucas studied him carefully, like someone who had learned. Far too young, that adults couldn't be trusted easily. "She's my sister," Lucas said. "Her name is Emma." Ethan glanced at the baby, then back at the boy. Snow clung to Lucas's eyelashes. "Where's your mom?" Ethan asked. Lucas swallowed hard. "She said she'd be back." Lucas had been waiting for hours. At least, it felt like hours. The sky had gone from gray to dark blue to black, and the Christmas lights across the street had flickered on one by one. His legs were numb. Emma had cried herself to exhaustion twice already, only to wake up screaming again. Their mother, Sarah, had told him to sit on the bench. "Just a minute," she'd said. "I'll be right back." Lucas didn't know how long a minute was, but he knew it wasn't this long. He remembered the way she'd hugged him tightly before leaving, her hands shaking. "Be strong, okay?" she'd whispered. Lucas had nodded, because that's what he always did. Now, as the strange man knelt in front of him, Lucas felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel all night. Hope. Ethan took off his coat without hesitation and draped it around the baby, tucking it carefully around her tiny body. Lucas's mouth fell open. "You'll be cold," he said. Ethan smiled faintly. "I'll survive." Emma's cries softened almost immediately, the warmth calming her. She let out a small hiccup and settled against Lucas's chest. "When did your mom leave?" Ethan asked. Lucas shrugged. "Before it got dark." Ethan checked his watch. It had been nearly 3 hours. His chest tightened. "Lucas," he said carefully, "has this happened before?" Lucas looked down. "She says she has to go find money." That was all Ethan needed to hear. He stood slowly, pulling out his phone. "I'm going to call someone who can help, okay?" he said. "You're not in trouble. I promise." Lucas nodded, though his grip tightened around Emma. Ethan dialed 911. While they waited, Ethan stayed kneeling in the snow, ignoring the cold seeping through his pants. He talked to Lucas about school, about superheroes, about anything that might keep the boy grounded in the moment. Ethan hadn't planned on stopping. He had a dinner reservation, a meeting early the next morning. A life carefully constructed around control and predictability. But as he listened to Lucas describe how he warmed Emma's bottle using hot water from a gas station bathroom, something inside him cracked open. Because once, long ago, Ethan had been Lucas. Ethan had grown up in foster care. He remembered the benches, the waiting, the feeling of being invisible to a world rushing past. He remembered crying quietly at night so he wouldn't bother anyone. And he remembered the one man who had stopped for him, a social worker who'd shown up late one winter evening with a blanket and a cup of hot chocolate. That moment had saved him. Ethan had spent his life climbing away from that past, building walls of success so thick nothing could get through, until tonight the police arrived first, followed by a social worker named Marlene. She crouched down beside Lucas, speaking softly, wrapping both children in blankets. "Did you do a good job taking care of your sister?" she asked. Lucas nodded proudly. "You did an amazing job," she said. Ethan watched as they gently lifted Emma into a car seat. "What happens now?" Ethan asked. Marlene sighed. "We'll try to locate the mother. The kids will go into temporary care." Lucas's face crumpled. "No," he said suddenly, panic rising. "I can't leave her." Ethan stepped forward without thinking. "They don't have to be separated," he said firmly. Marlene looked at him. "And you are?" "Someone who can help." Ethan replied that Ethan's words hung in the air. "You can't just," Marlene began. "I know," Ethan said. "But I'm willing to be a temporary guardian. I have the resources, and I won't let them be separated." Marlene studied him carefully. "This isn't a decision you make lightly," she said. "Children aren't charity cases." Ethan met her gaze. "I know exactly what they are," he said quietly. That night, Lucas slept in a real bed for the first time in weeks. Emma slept in a crib beside him, wrapped in clean blankets. Ethan sat in the hallway outside the room, unable to sleep. The house felt different, alive in a way it never had before. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt afraid of failing them, afraid of loving them. Sarah was found 2 days later. She cried when she saw her children, collapsing to the floor in shame. "I didn't want this," she sobbed. "I just didn't know what else to do." Ethan watched from the doorway, heart heavy. She loved them. But love wasn't always enough. The court hearings took months. Ethan attended every one, and when the judge finally asked if he wished to pursue permanent guardianship, Ethan didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said. Lucas squeezed his hand. Emma giggled. The snow fell again on Maplewood Avenue. Lucas, now 10, ran ahead laughing, while Emma toddled behind him, bundled in pink. Ethan followed, hands in his pockets, smiling. They stopped at the old bench. "You saved us here," Lucas said. Ethan shook his head. "No," he said. "You saved me." Most people kept walking that night, but one man stopped, and because he did, 3 lives were changed forever.